Well, fine. So actually we are lucky to hear these bells, because only the second tier, the bells of the second tier of the bell tower were ringing. Well, actually we have more than 20 bells here, and almost all of them are ringing. Well, but they ring not very often, only during the religious services. And these bells are from the 16th up to the early 19th century, so these are historical bells with very beautiful sound. Well, as for the palace, so the royal palace and this white building, it is from 1491, from the end of the 15th century, the oldest part of the royal palace. It was one of the reception halls where the feasts were organized, and the patriarch now will have a meal there, I am sure. The feasts were organized, political events were celebrated, ambassadors, foreign ambassadors were received. Well, but it was meant only for men. Women were not allowed in till the end of the 17th century. Before the time of Peter the Great, women never participated in politics, and there was strict division within the palace. There was a part for men, a part for women. Well, and this hall, reception hall, is called faceted hall or faceted chamber, because its main facade is decorated with faceted limestones, white stones. And next to it, this yellow facade with beautiful limestone carving, I mean the window frames and cornices, it is the 19th century part of the palace, because the palace was constantly reconstructed, and the last reconstruction was finished in 1847. And so you see this 19th century part, and this church to the left, it is called the Cathedral of the Annunciation of the Virgin Mary. It is also a part of the palace. It is linked to the palace with a special gallery. And the main priest of this church was the personal royal confessor, the spiritual leader of Russian Tsars. And the basement of this church was used for keeping royal treasures. And the special treasure house, much larger building, well, with some underground place, it was also built next to this church, but it has not survived to our days. Well, and with your tickets after the tour, you can visit this church, well, both the interior of the church, and do you see to its right side this black iron door? It leads to the basement. And you can go to the basement. It is a very small space, but we have very interesting exposition there. Treasure troves, which had been founded by archaeologists here on the Kremlin grounds. We have a lot of coins and the 12th century female ornaments and decorations. Well, they were hidden before the Mongol invasion in the 12th century. So you can have a look both at the interior of the church and this archaeological exposition. Well, but as for the cathedrals, the main one is this one, and it is the oldest and the largest. It was built in 1479. 1479, well, on the site of an older church, and it is devoted to the Virgin Mary, to the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, to the Cathedral of the Assumption. And all the coronation ceremonies took place here. Even when the capital was in St. Petersburg, all the coronation ceremonies of Russian emperors and empresses took place here, till the last one of Nicholas II. But inaugurations of our patriarchs, the heads of the church, also took place here. And this cathedral was used as the burial place for the patriarchs. 19 people, 19 heads of the church, they are buried here. And some of them are saints. They were declared saints after their death. And today is the memory day of one of these saints, actually Saint Peter. He was the head of the church, he was the first head of the church who began to live in Moscow. in the 14th century. It was very important because in the 14th century there was no large Russian state. There were many principalities and many princes, but the church was united, and it was very important where the head of the church resided. And initially he lived in the city of Kiev, now it is the capital of Ukraine, because in that old period there was no difference between our states. But since the 12th century, the head of the church lived in the town of Vladimir. It is not far from Moscow. But in 1325, Peter, he moved from Vladimir to Moscow. And Moscow became the religious center and very soon the political center. And actually when that St. Peter, when he arrived to Moscow in 1325, he found Moscow absolutely provincial and very small town with wooden fortress, and everything was of wood, churches, houses, and he blessed the foundation of the first stone edifice. It was the predecessor of this cathedral. And he was the first who was buried here. He started this tradition, and today it is his memory day, and that's why the patriarch, the head of the church, he was responsible for the church service, and that's why it is closed now for the museum visitors, but just in an hour. I think it 1:30 or at I think it in 1:30. So you can go inside this church. And it is the only one which is built of limestones. It was very very widespread in Russia, and it is very interesting that this cathedral was built by Italian master from Bologna, Aristotle Fioravanti. Well, but he was asked to build this cathedral as a sort of copy, as a sort of model of an old Russian cathedral which still exists in the town of Vladimir, the older capital of Russia. It is from the 12th century, and this one looks like its prototype. And again, I think I have to explain why so many Italians. The walls and the Kremlin, the walls and the towers of the Kremlin fortress, some parts of the royal palace, several cathedrals were built by Italians. It doesn't mean that Russian masters could not do this work, they could. But Italians were the best. It was the time of Renaissance, and they were invited all over Europe, and it was the question of prestige to invite the best masters. But there was one more very important reason, political reason. Because just in that period, the last quarter of the 15th century, it was very crucial historical period in Russia, the formation of large Russian state, centralized state on the side of many principalities. And we finally got rid of Mongol domination, of foreign domination, in 1480, and with the downfall of Byzantine Empire, it was conquered by Turks. Russia became the only one independent Orthodox state in the world. It was very important for our ancestors, and the official political ideology proclaimed that Russia is the legitimate successor of the greatest world empires, Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire. And they said Moscow is the third Rome, after Rome and after Constantinople. And the idea was to invite the architects from the first Rome, Italians, to reconstruct the third Rome and the last Rome, as they believed. But that Italian master, he was asked to build this cathedral as a copy of an old Russian Byzantine architectural forms. So it is actually Russian Byzantine. But have a look at this one from the opposite side. Stay with my back. It is the Archangel Cathedral. It is devoted to Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael, from the Christian point of view, is the patron saint for all the warriors and soldiers, and Russian princes and czars as chief military commanders. So the Archangel Cathedral was the burial place for the heads of the state, for princes and czars. And 54 people are buried here, 54. It is the largest necropolis in our country. Well, everyone till Peter the Great, because Peter moved the capital to St. Petersburg, so Peter and his successors were buried in St. Petersburg. But his father and brothers and Ivan the Terrible with his relatives, well, they are here. And I think all together we will go inside this one just in several minutes. Well, and it was built in the early 16th century by Italian master from Venice. And it has absolutely Renaissance architectural design. Well, and you have to keep in mind again that it was not painted in white color in that period. They began to paint it in white only in the 18th century. Initially, when it was built of bricks. The walls were red. They were painted in red. And all the carved details, I mean the seashells in the upper part of the walls, these cornices and capitals, they were white. And they contrasted against red walls. And 5 cupolas were covered with black tiles. So it was very bright and multicolored. And it is important again to comprehend that in old Russia, I mean, before the time of Peter the Great, before the 18th century, now Russian people, they preferred bright colors because they always took into consideration our climate with long winters, with predominant gray and white colors, very boring, and they preferred something bright around them. But with the change of the criteria of beauty, since the 18th century, Catherine the Great actually she ordered to paint this cathedral in white color. And it also concerns this one which is devoted to the Annunciation of the Virgin Mary. It was also painted. It was not absolutely white. Well, but it was built by Russian masters at the end of the 15th century in 1489, and so it has absolutely Russian architectural design, pyramidal form, very asymmetrical and picturesque. And so you can compare. It is Italian design, it is Russian, and it is Russian Byzantine, but built by Italian master. Well, and now I would like to show you some more parts of the royal palace, which you could see from here.
Đầu này là mình mới lụm này mới được, cái mới nói là hên quá này, nhờ có em đi đó làm sao.